I'm Matt Landau from vrmb.com, and this is Unlocked, Season 7, Unglamorous. This episode's part of our CEO series, and it's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. Matt Roberts is the CEO of Vacasa, one of the largest vacation rental companies in the world. Matt was previously the CEO of OpenTable, which is the app that allows you to reserve tables at your favorite restaurants. And Matt's not entirely new to vacation rentals, as he was previously on Vacasa's board, which is granted a very different vantage point than being its CEO. But as a disclaimer, and probably a testament to the theme of this season, unglamorous, we've chosen to include Matt because Vacasa, whether you like them or not, is a huge player in the full vacation rental ecosystem, and knowing what their CEO is thinking can be simultaneously awkward and useful. You won't hear me doing a Bob Woodward style inquisition because I'm not an investigative journalist, nor much about them going public because that's simply not something I know much about. What you will hear are questions I know lots of owners and managers are wondering, and call-outs that I believe can strengthen our positioning, plus references to new terms for me like share shift, domain expertise, and beautiful black silk sheets. Here we go. Matt, I would like to formally welcome you to the very exclusive club of Matts in the vacation rental business.
Thank you.
And you're part of an even more elite group. You're part of the Matts in the vacation rental business who have hair. How does that feel?
It feels fantastic.
You have actually really nice hair. I saw you on an interview on television at the airport the other day. You have very nice hair.
Well, this interview's off to a great start.
And I said to the woman next to me, I said, I'm going to be interviewing him next week. And she said, who is he? And I said, he's the CEO of this company, Vacasa. And she said, what's that? And I began this little speech that I find myself giving quite often, which is explaining what professional vacation rental companies are to the general population who is not super familiar with our sector. So I'm, first of all, very curious. When you meet a random person, perhaps at a dinner party or something, how do you very succinctly describe what we do?
Yeah, it's a great. What's the elevator pitch, right? We enable people that have a second home to start to earn income from that home, and we do everything that's required to let them do that in a very seamless way. So that is everything from setting up the property to start to rent it, to servicing the reservations themselves and making sure that the home is set up for the next guest. So I think it's really a very outsourced way to get into the vacation rental game is to work with the professional manager.
And is the follow-up question in your case, like it is often mine, do they say, oh, you mean like Airbnb?
Which is exactly what happens typically. And it's easy to then follow on to say, well, we're the suppliers to Airbnb. We're the ones that help create the product that they have on their shelf that they market to guests.
And you come from an incredible journey with OpenTable, which is a company that I use several times a week, both as CFO in taking the company public and as CEO in the sale to Priceline, which is now Booking. Was your job interview in this formal capacity with Vacasa a similar kind of thing? Like, we want you to replicate what you did there here, or was it new?
Well, it was less of a job interview so much as I was on the board. And when we decided to bring in a new CEO, I was initially on an interim basis, and then the global health pandemic hit us, and plans changed, and then I took on the role on a more permanent basis. So I think the open table parallels are really interesting. I had a great time running open table, and I saw many parallels to what Open Table was doing in terms of focusing on the supply side of an overall growth opportunity and using a technology platform to really focus on that supply, make customers successful with our service, and ultimately you're rewarded with creating a very defensible business that's serving a really important role in the overall ecosystem's growth.
And so those dynamics that you bring with you from that world that you see very clearly in the vacation rental industry today, you can apply what you learned, but have there been any big new discoveries since you've taken over the role as CEO?
Oh, sure. There was a big learning curve across the board. There's one thing from being on the board to actually then starting to operate a business. You learn what you didn't know when you were sitting on the board. But the the difference between Open Table One, of the primary ones, was we facilitated that initial introduction to a restaurant, but we weren't responsible ultimately for the hospitality that the guest received. That was up to the restaurant team and staff. With Vacasa, we have the opportunity to influence positively the relationship or the experience, the hospitality that a guest receives from start to finish. It's all on us, and so taking on that even more complex operational logistics heavy part was new for me and really exciting because there's many more opportunities to improve when you're involved with more aspects of the service.
Vacation rentals are sort of famously different. I mean, each home, kind of the big strength here is that they're all a slightly different floor plan. They're all slightly different style. They're all owned by somebody different. So, is standardizing that guest experience a tricky thing? And will that ever be easy?
Yes, it is a tricky thing, as you can imagine, for the reasons that you just articulated. But to the extent that you can do it with applying technology and therefore have a scale approach to doing it, it really is exciting opportunity. I get probably the most excited about this particular part of the opportunity because we can start to create more consistency of experience across a diverse portfolio of properties. As you mentioned, it is very hard because unlike the Hiltons or the Marriotts of the world that are dealing with consistent floor plans and decor, they have simple things like centralized uh, laundry facilities. We don't have the benefits of that in the vacation rental space, as you know. So it's all about embracing what makes vacation rentals appealing to guests, which is the variety and the diversity. It's not all cookie cutter, but layering on top of that opportunities predominantly through technology and people to create more of a consistent hotel-like experience on top of that.
So I was not alive, and I'm not sure if you were, back when the first hotel brands began to offer standardized experiences throughout destinations. Is that kind of the role you see as the first primary mover in our space?
I think it's an opportunity for us to, where it makes sense, get some of the variability out. For example, let's just take a simple one like sheets. I don't think guests really value black silk sheets, right? And so I think they might prefer crisp white linens instead. And so that's just a small example, but if you think about it, there are ways to influence the experience through very practical, physical ways. But I'm thinking more about our guest app and the ability, for example, to have a guest request a late checkout or an early check-in or do things like just 24/7 they can message within the app. And that is the type of service that people are looking for. Even though they're in a vacation rental, they still are getting more accustomed to that type of ability to get that instant response and instant feedback to whatever they need.
I don't know the hotel industry well enough, but I don't think, at least in the early days, that any of them were building their own technology, building the businesses atop their own tech stack. And that is something that Vacasa is doing. Is that to accommodate these nuances?
Absolutely. I think our technology platform is the only reason we can do what we're doing. That I don't think it works, period, if we try to do it without investing the tens of millions of dollars that we have in our technology platform that allows us to do things like predictive clean time routing. Think about the way that Uber routes their drivers. We have sophisticated technology that actually allows us to route our team to the right place at the right time, that we know how long it'll take to do an average clean. We have specific unit level measurement of checklists and before and after photos, and smart home technology. All of that is meant to do two things. One is to enable a more consistent guest experience. The second is to help our homeowner care team do their jobs in a high quality way that ultimately results in guests giving 5-star reviews, which help homeowners make more money.
And I've heard people refer to Uber as a technology company. Do you refer to yourselves as the same way?
Absolutely. We are at our core a technology company. I think I could, I don't know how many ways that I could articulate how it works because we're technology enabled, and wouldn't work if we weren't. But we rely on technology for every aspect of what we're doing. In fact, one of the byproducts of our, intent to go public here is to raise capital to even triple the amount of money that we're spending on our technology, because we believe so much in the opportunity to continue to innovate in that area. What that technology does is help us create more value for our homeowners and our guests and our own operations team, which ultimately helps us build a hospitality brand in vacation rentals. But it all starts at our core with being a technology company.
And we're currently filming a new docu-series. It's called Home Runners. And we interviewed Cliff Johnson, one of the co-founders of Vacasa. And he very candidly expressed that he felt some of the hospitality of the company that he founded was getting lost. So I'm curious where hospitality fits in a technology company, and perhaps what metrics you use to ensure that you're still doing a good hospitality job.
Well, we look and ask our customers all the time, how are we doing? We look at Net Promoter Score, which is a classic marketing tool to measure trends in how folks are feeling about the business.
Is that the one that asks them if they would recommend it to a friend?
That's right.
Got it.
The measurement of that on a regular basis, the surveying, the feedback, the webinars that we do for our homeowners, the marketing that we are doing with our guests. Look, I think that our team is fantastic in the local operations team. I think that they care very deeply about helping guests create memories. And they take the responsibility very seriously, because they also have families, and they save up their money all year to go on that one trip a year. So we take very seriously our responsibility to have that guest have an amazing time and enjoy their time and not focus on anything but enjoying the activity. So at our core, it's really a level of excitement to support that, and empathy for every part of what the guest journey looks like, that drives the hospitality side.
I only recently had this little epiphany. It's going to sound super simple, but I realized that if the outcome of our work is guests having memorable vacations, like unforgettable vacations, and if we do that effectively, we make money. Our bottom line is directly correlated with making memories, and vice versa. If we're not making memories, we begin to slip. Is that something that's obvious to you?
Well, it's bears repeating, right? Because if you think about, like, the core of your question is, is your focus on a technology company sort of to the exclusion of being a hospitality company? I think the answer is resounding no. I think it's the foundation to be a hospitality company is to have a strong foundation of technology, because some of the things that you want to be able to provide in terms of supporting those memories and supporting homeowners and our own team from doing their job is rooted in the technology itself. So, I think that the two just go hand in hand, and actually, the technology is a enabler for the hospitality that we want to be able to deliver at the economics that makes sense, right? If you tried to do it all manually, if you didn't apply technology, the business model would not work, and as a result, you could not afford to do it at scale the way that we're doing it.
I like that. When you acquire a company in any given destination, you are acquiring the on the ground ability to have these connections and do some of those manual things that can't be automated. Do you ever struggle with the cost of retiring the brand that was built as that vacation rental management company in whatever destination? Or is that just a cost of building a big business?
I think you're referring more to when we add properties by virtue of acquiring local property managers versus signing up. The great thing about that program is there's so many owners of the local property managers that have done a fantastic job building great businesses of a certain size and of a certain scale. And in order to decide to scale larger than what they're currently at, they have some pretty difficult decisions to make in terms of incremental costs that they want to add into their business. And sometimes that puts them backwards in overall economics of their business. So they'll stay at a certain scale for a period of time, as you know. At some point, if you're looking to monetize the business that you've worked very hard to build over a period of time, that either you might need or want to look for a partner like Vacasa, because a couple of things. One, we make homeowners more money because of the technology that we employ in doing yield management and yield optimization. So we immediately will benefit homeowners in terms of making them more money, which local property managers very much care about. And the other aspect is their team. There's longstanding employees in many of these companies, and they all join Vacasa, and they often will have better access to benefits and career opportunities that are by definition more expansive because the company is larger in scale. So there's usually not a lot of hard decisions that need to be made when we're bringing on portfolios. We've done this, almost 200 times. So we have a pretty sophisticated approach, a very tried and true playbook of making sure that we're doing this with a lot of respect to what has been built in any given local market, and making sure that we're adding the value that we said we would be able to add.
And diving a little bit more into the homeowners side of the equation, our professional vacation rental management sector is famously tricky because we have two customers, guests and homeowners. How do you guys internally view that prioritization?
Well, our prioritization is really on the homeowner side, because the focus of the business is predominantly on supply, and supply starts with having properties and making sure that we have the most amount of available nights per property, and that we can sell those through at the highest rate per night. So that revenue per available night is a key to driving homeowner value. And we believe that by focusing on the homeowner value, it's not to the detriment of the guest at all. because the things that we do to help a property stand out and therefore sell through those nights are all the things that support guest experiences. So, for example, outfitting the home with smart home technology, the guest app that I mentioned earlier, just the actual condition of the home, that it's clean, the Wi-Fi is up and running, that it's been properly cared for and maintained. Those are all the things that the guest wants, but they're also foundational to actually getting that 5-star review, which will drive more revenue for homeowners. So our focus is on the homeowner side. The alignment of interest is there because we only get paid if we're actually successful at renting out the home. And the interesting thing, most people don't know, but 35% of our nights that we sell are direct Vacasa, not through our distribution channels. And that's actually up from 18% back in 2018. So the direct side of our business has grown considerably over the last couple of years. Um, but we're not trying to just sell on Vacasa's site. We're trying to sell everywhere simultaneously and as best as we can, because that's what makes our homeowners the most amount of money.
And back to one of your earlier comments about constantly assessing your hospitality work by using the Net Promoter Score with your guests. Is it a similar kind of survey that you're presenting to your homeowners? And is retention the primary metric there?
That's right. We both measure sort of the simple scoring in the end would be an NPS score, but we ask a survey on a monthly basis, which goes into every aspect of the service that we provide, giving our homeowners an opportunity to weigh in. We have homeowner success team members that do outbound calling to homeowners and make sure that we're on top of everything. So we're investing in further tools and technologies over the course of this year. Like we're launching this next month a dedicated homeowner app, uh, all of which is trying to make sure that we have a high level of engagement with our homeowners, because that's the foundation of a good relationship. Like the communication is the foundation, and making sure that they feel aware of what's going on with their properties, what has happened, what is currently happening, and what is planned to happen. Makes them feel very confident and trust that their property is in good hands.
So, when we look at the spectrum of vacation rental managers in any given destination, I oftentimes reference my theory of limited edition, which argues that the small managers should do the things that do not scale, the things heavily rooted in personality, in order to carve out their moat, their niche from bigger, richer competition. And I almost always point at Vacasa as an example of that bigger, richer competition. What, in your mind, can the limited edition vacation rental managers do better?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, right? From a business perspective, and from a proud of what we do perspective, it's difficult to see where we're limited in terms of meeting the same type of service level as a local property manager, because we are local.
Folks, just a quick call out. This is what I think of as a Vacasa blind spot. Matt, in their defense, is focused on dominating the market and therefore can't see, or won't admit to seeing, anything that a smaller professional can do better. But your limited edition value proposition, the fact that you're either family owned and operated, headquartered in your destination, specialized in any given kind of property or guest, and able to wow every single one of them with agile surprises, and in many cases, all these things. This is your great advantage. And if you compare your service to Vacasa's, you likely know there's a huge difference right now. But just believing that isn't enough. You need to double down on this blind spot consistently. And you must prove that's who you are. That's what makes you better. Okay, sorry, had to include that. Matt goes on.
We literally have people local in the market, and they're supported by the benefit of also having centralized facilities and centralized teams to support them and help them focus on that low things that only can happen at a local level, that's all they need to focus on, because back at central, we're handling all the other things. So I think we have a very good system and a very good structure to be able to provide that same type of personality focus and personal touch at a local level, predominantly because that team doesn't also have to worry about some of the other aspects of, for example, marketing or the finance side of the equation. That's all handled. And also they have the whole entire technology platform that they can rely on. So I think that our differentiation is pretty significant. And I do think that we at a local level provide great service and personal relationships.
So if everybody on the management side is focused on the supply right now, and home owners are getting all kinds of offers and new properties are coming onto the market, is your goal basically to represent the best inventory in any given destination?
I think best is a very subjective term. I think we acknowledge that there's an entire market from value to luxury, and there's a that fits the demand from guests. So we're not targeting one type of property, for example, luxury or just the value. We're trying to be very representative, and we are representative of the selection within any given market. And we're purposeful in that because it's just the way to take advantage of the natural demand that comes through both our distribution partners and directly to our own site.
And now, a word from our sponsors. We have on the line Sean Miller, the president of Point Central, and Jeremy Gall, the founder of Breezeway. Jeremy, how do you describe the value proposition of Point Central to property managers that you come in contact with?
Point Central and keyless entry just feels to me as a necessity for property managers. You can't afford to take the time to be running keys back and forth to properties or meeting guests or using lock boxes. People want a predictable experience. And with keyless entry solutions like Point Central, you can make sure people actually got into the property. You know they got into the property through the notifications. And then you can tie in other services like Breezeway and other notifications to really supercharge your operation.
That's very well put. Sean Miller, do you approve of that message?
I do approve of that message.
If you'd like to do a demo with Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. They're now taking on vacation rental managers with less than 25 properties, which is a complete game changer. And how would you describe the value proposition of Breezeway to those who aren't aware of it?
Yeah, so Breezeway, I think it's been interesting, right? I think cleanliness in a home was before really just part of that initial impression, right? How did, when a guest show up, a property manager provide that wow feeling, and having a consistent and complete cleaning process was important to that. Cleanliness is now not just becoming a nice to have, but a standard of what a guest expects with the world around us, and increased focus on our health as part of cleanliness and safety. And so I think what Breezeway provides in this easy to use tool that is very flexible, right? Every property manager understands that, every vacation rental home is different. There's different nooks and crannies and nuances and barbecue grills and how each thing needs to get taken care of, that, a human being can probably remember after enough repetition. But having a tool like Breezeway that helps remove that doubt and make sure that every person who touches a home to clean it will follow the same process and therefore provide the same clean wow factor when that guest shows up is a critical need in today's vacation rental world.
Beautiful. That was a fun role reversal, guys. Good job. If you'd like to do a demo with Breezeway and get free implementation valued at $1,000, head over to breezeway.io/VRMB. And you guys have a real estate division, right?
We do.
What's up with that?
Well, as you're, I think, aware that in certain states, it's a requirement to have a brokerage license in order to do short-term rentals. So it mostly had been started as a compliance function. And what it has evolved into, and while we have our own real estate agents themselves actually actively out selling, is we have access to more data than anybody else about, on a national level certainly, about which properties will make the best rental opportunities. So when you're a home prospective second home buyer, and there's more and more of those nowadays, you are more increasingly you're looking to actually rent the home out for a period of time in order to support the significant price increases for these properties. I mean, you just have to just track it a little bit in the news, and you'll see that real estate prices in general have gone up meaningfully over the last year, and certainly second home prices have even gone up even more. So one of the things that we're proud of is being able to support the purchase of second homes for people because they can count on the income opportunity. So I think one of our largest reason for when we do lose a property from the platform is because it's home sold. And so our real estate initiative allows us to make sure that we stay in close contact with that transaction and prevent that property from attriting.
And at this conference last week, we were at the Data and Revenue Management Conference in Charleston. I met several real estate developers who were in the process of buying up real estate in a number of different destinations. Do you keep your pulse at all on developers who are looking to come in? And is that part of your purview?
Yes, we are approached by pretty much all of them because again, we have the data that allows them to make intelligent decisions about which properties they should look to acquire, because we can calculate the cap rates for them, and we can figure out often they may have already been a Vacasa customer, or we certainly have done an estimate about what the rental opportunity, an informed estimate about what the rental opportunity could be. So getting that kind of information coupled with being able to support them with the property management side of the equation too, and having them have one-stop shop in order to work with, that's been a very appealing aspect for these investors.
I love it just because they're like sponges. They just want to learn as much as possible about the industry. And it is quite different from the conventional world of real estate that they're familiar with. And one, I think, big advantage a lot of people listening to this have is their experience. The human capital in this industry is as impressive as I've ever come across. They have incredible backstories. They're multi-talented. And I think the individuals that work at Vacasa is an area that doesn't always get the credit it deserves. The quality of people and their background that are working on this project, but that they're only limited in numbers. So I'm curious, with this challenge of hiring being very real right now, where you're looking perhaps outside of that core vacation rental um, set.
Well, you're right to point out that it's been a challenge to staff up for this busy season. I think all of your listeners will commiserate with that, and it has had a overall wage inflation impact on the business as well. You know, we're certainly spending more per hour than what we had originally planned to do, and it's just getting folks to be interested in going back to work too. It's kind of a crazy time right now that we're living through. I'm very proud of our team because they were successful at hiring up and getting to the right staffing levels to make sure that we're providing the great service. But that was a big effort by a centralized recruiting team with considerable resources put against things like recruiting advertisements, referral bonuses, those type of things. So it certainly wasn't an inexpensive proposition for us to make sure that we had the right team during this busy season.
And when somebody leaves Vacasa, an employee leaves Vacasa, they have a non-compete, right?
Yeah, generally speaking.
which to me as an onlooker means that this talented person um, leaves the industry. The industry loses that experience. I was curious if that's ever something that you would consider adjusting.
Well, it depends on the particular role, really. I think the general labor, if you look at our entire team, the vast majority of folks, well, first of all, we have great tenure of our team, so thankfully that's it's a problem that's more few and far between. But it really depends on when somebody leaves, to the extent that they possess a meaningful amount of proprietary data about our systems or our processes, our teams, and our approaches. That's something that is reasonable for the company to want to protect. So I think it's a situation by situation evaluation that we go through.
Listeners, I want to jump in here and point out another trend I've been thinking about a lot lately, and it has to do with the way big corporations with basically unlimited resources impact the independent owner management community. Not unlike the way Amazon or Uber or any other venture capital backed disruptor used irresistibly low rates for customers and irresistibly high compensation packages to the best employees because they had virtually unlimited resources in order to get traction. Vacasa, too, is likely wielding those dynamics. It's a tough pill to swallow, frankly, for anyone smaller who operates profitably, but who are basically penalized as collateral damage of this business environment. But my advice here is the same song that I've been singing since I started VRMB 10 years ago. Heck, it's the same thing I've been singing since I started my vacation rental business in 2006. Forming meaningful relationships goes an incredibly long way to offset this advantage. I remember when our most amazing manager, Ivana, came to me so scared and nearly crying with a job offer from a big new hotel chain in town. She expressed to me how difficult this offer was to refuse financially. But after that conversation, we came to a compromise that kept her with us for another 3 years. That relationship, the trust and respect that we had for one another, that was literally the only thing that kept us going. Okay, sorry for this rant. It's just something I'm starting to think about more and more lately. And do you share this same feeling that the folks who have been building their businesses and been inside the trenches for years, if not decades, they possess this incredible intel that sometimes they take for granted, especially for people coming in from the outside?
Yeah, it's interesting because we'll be asked by investors as part of this process of going public, what's just to prevent you know one of the big OTAs from doing what you do, and I kind of laugh because I have a general belief that people generally underestimate how hard it is to do other people's business as a starting point, and then if you add on top of it the significant complexity, operational logistics, etc., managing the teams, the service delivery that's inherent in our business, it's just up a whole nother level of complexity that some of these folks, like on the OTA side, they don't have a local service delivery platform, or really have ever chose to want to do that. And that's a big step in a different direction than what their core business is. So yeah, I agree that there's a lot of domain knowledge that gets accumulated by over time by doing what we do.
So as we turn and look a little bit forward, I'm curious what you are excited about growing the most at Vacasa to begin with.
Well, I think that the focus will continue to be for quite some time on just the absolute number of properties on our platform. So we have just over 30,000, 33,000 properties on the platform at the end of second quarter. There's 5 million vacation homes, not all of which are rented today, but in the US, there's 5 million second homes. And of those 5 million, just on Airbnb and Verbal alone, just the two sites in just the US, there's 1.3 million whole homes listed. I'm excluding people's lofts in Soho, that type of thing. It's just really whole units. So that doesn't mean that there's only 1.3 million homes rented, because there's many folks that, rent it. They might do it offline entirely, or just on one site, or not on either of those two sites, or just on their local property manager site. Um, but we look at the 5 million as the big opportunity, Matt, because over 20% of our new sales are people that have never rented before. So they're in that 5 million, but they're not in that 1.3 million. And so if you're sitting at 33,000 like we are, and you're looking at an opportunity for growth, you really need to continue just to do what you're doing and focus on adding properties and adding customers and to the platform. And then not only just adding them, but continuing to figure out ways to apply technology to optimize the whole thing, right? Like, how do you get, small basis points of improvement in every aspect of the operation, such that you're driving more revenue for homeowners and for Vacasa by extension, and also getting more efficient and delivering better service. So that's really our focus, and will be our focus for quite some time.
And how do you do that? I mean, I know the properties that are on the platforms are fairly easy to identify, but how do you find all the other ones?
Well, there's a lot of data sources out there, including our own. We have the largest database of our own proprietary data. So we score all the prospect properties across the entire country, and we come up with a predictive model about which properties we should go out and market to and acquire and add to the platform, based on a number of variables, including our own history of knowing, two-bedroom condos on this block typically rent out this much for any given year, and this is how much it costs us to service them. So we actually get it down to the contribution margin per property. So it's a process that isn't much different than many software companies, where you identify leads, and then you market to those leads with direct response marketing. And then ultimately we have a group of local sales executives that their job is to articulate the benefit and sell the solution to homeowners.
Is that similar to approaching restaurants back with OpenTable?
Very much so. We had a local sales team there too, uh, for pretty similar reasons. In a local business, relationship matter a lot, and so having the ability to meet face to face, or knowing that that person that you're dealing with, that you're about to give your keys to, is, their phone number is the same zip code, the same area code as yours. There's a comfort level that comes from that, especially when you're talking about, your house. And so that playbook for OpenTable was important, because ultimately we were sitting at our sales reps would sit at the bar at 10 o'clock at night, when the chef owner was done. And that's the only time that they could get a hold of them. They would be bombarded. The restaurateurs would get bombarded with cold calls all the way through the day of people. So we send people out in the field in order to make sure that we make that personal connection and have the opportunity to make the sale. So there's a lot of similarities to what Vacasa does.
And are you going out into the field yourself ever?
I have, yes, I absolutely have. And it was very eye opening. Again, there's a difference between being on the board of Vacasa and operating the business from from a lot of different ways. And one of the best things, in fact, since then, I've, made it a strong suggestion that other board members do the same thing, and get out in the field. And we actually have a very organized program. Obviously, 90% of our team is in the field. But for the centralized folks, or people that are more office based, whether it's, finance or marketing, or like folks like me that are more in the administrative side, it's important to understand and have a tremendous amount of awareness what's going on day to day. What is our home care team facing, so that we can make sure that we're supporting them the best possible way with technology or process improvements or communication that we send out to homeowners or guests. And there's only one way to do that, is just get out there and do it. So I had the plastic gown on, the mask, the shield, the gloves, the booties. It was hot. It was hot. It was, which again is another way just to understand, like you said in the beginning, the dedication and the care that our field team shows to our guests and our homeowners. It's just so it makes everybody very proud to work for the company.
I would love to be the person sitting at that table. The CEO is like, okay, new rule. You have to go out on vacation.
Yeah.
And I want you to take notes.
Well, no, you got to go clean. That's what I did. You
Oh,
gotta
right,
go
right.
clean. Yeah, yeah.
I have a question about advocacy, which is a topic that's very close to my heart because of how many instances I've seen of unfair regulation in this new industry of ours, effectively shutting down businesses that have been built up over time. And in a recent interview with Eric Broughton, who's the chief strategy officer of Inhabit IQ, we had an interesting moment in the conversation in which he explained to me how he justified committing money to VRMA advocacy efforts. And he said it's very straightforward. With my investors, I say, look, if we're not proactively contributing to fair regulation, what just happened in Florida, all of our businesses in Florida are going to get shut down, and then we have no income. And for that reason, Eric then went and wrote a $50,000 donation, $10,000 on behalf of each company that they represent at the fundraising event. I'm curious if you have a rubric like that you guys use internally and how you view advocacy.
Yeah, well, I agree that it's important to make sure that we're part of every conversation. I think that's really the foundation, because if you aren't, then the extremes will prevail. And in particular, you'll have at a city council meeting, you'll have one very vocal homeowner that doesn't rent their property, that had one bad experience, that then speaks with authority about the evils of the industry and why it has to get shut down. So more than anything, we need to make sure that people are aware of actual data and not hyperbole. And so we actually have an internal advocacy group. We work with an external advocacy firm, as well as make donations, like you mentioned. Regulation in and of itself is not bad. It is potentially valuable. It is sensible regulation, and our advocacy efforts are all about making sure that we're balanced in our and we represent homeowners' property rights too, because a lot of folks, we forget that this is our restriction on our ability to rent out your home is restricting your property value. And you had income opportunity, maybe you bought that, and now you can't make money on that anymore. That's a big deal. So I do think that people, the overall theme, I think, from an advocacy perspective, is to be thoughtful about what's put in place to allow people to stop addressing things from the extremes, but really start talking about what's the data? What does the data say? How can we be good neighbors too? Because ultimately, all of us as professional managers want to be good neighbors. And what does that look like? What are the things that we can do to be proactive in getting ahead of any potential issues that we can support neighborhood relations?
Penultimate question. The demand right now is so far beyond the supply. Do you think there will be a time, and if so, when that supply growth outpaces the actual demand anytime soon?
I don't see it anytime soon.
Years.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I don't see it because we've got a trend where vacation rental preference is continuing to accelerate. The growth rate, the share shift to vacation rentals is is pretty clear, and it's not slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating, and we already just don't have enough supply. So, and there's no reason to assume that that trend will reverse itself uh, anytime soon. So, I think this is our reality, which is good news. It's good news if you're focused on supply. It's not as good a news if you are, the only demand, because your growth rate is highly dependent on the supply side of the equation.
And finally, this was an idea that was brought to my attention this past week that I hadn't really ever thought about. McDonald's as a company had started off as these actual restaurants. However, it morphed into a franchise model that became far less heavy in terms of assets. Would Vacasa ever consider that?
Well, I think there's multiple models, as you may know, that Turnkey, which we closed that acquisition in April of this year, had a number of different products that were more marketing and book related. So their Guestworks product, the thing that you would have to get comfortable with is, does it work for the entire system? Because ultimately, when somebody books a Vacasa property, there's an expectation of the service that they're going to be receiving, and there's an accountability of Vacasa for that service to be delivered in a certain way in order for the brand to be supported. So when you take the work part of that, meaning the actual servicing of the property, out from underneath the brand and trust it to somebody else, and you focus on maybe the marketing side it only, it has some real risks associated with it. It more than just sort of near term economics. It has some real risk to it from a brand perspective. So I think there's a potential, but there would be a lot of things to think through on how that could be implemented in a way that allowed us to continue to to grow and support the hospitality brand that we're also creating.
And have you got any big wish for our industry moving into the next couple years?
I think that the opportunity for us all to figure out ways to help homeowners leverage their important asset that can make a big difference to their own personal income, and be creative wherever we can in order to support them doing that. I think that's the kind of the collective goal, and really being good neighbors is back to the advocacy part, but also from a guest perspective, ensuring that everybody has as memorable, consistent experience as possible. That's the stuff that will continue to support the share shift, which will, to your point about will supply ever catch up. And I said it not for a long time. It's because of that share shift. So the things that we do to support that great hospitality delivery is ultimately what's going to make the difference.
I'm guessing you found that interview a combination of interesting and maybe frustrating. For me, it validated some of the things I already knew, but it also got me thinking about stuff that has honestly always been a bit beyond my wavelength. My big belief going into this interview was that Vacasa, compared to some of the vacation rental owners and managers I work with, has plenty of room for improvement. And my takeaway coming out of it is that with access to ungodly amounts of capital, Vacasa is very likely to improve a lot of it. And that Vacasa's success is a very different kind of success than the majority of vacation rental owners and managers who are focused on quality, not on quantity, which is okay. It's important to know where everybody stands. The one thing I remain sort of morally unsure about is how these venture-backed companies that aren't profitable will ultimately impact the smaller, already profitable hospitality businesses in communities that we know and love. And I think we each need to come to our own conclusions on that. It may be obvious, but Matt Roberts is not a member of VRMB Communities. But if our unlocked philosophy of information sharing resonates with you, consider joining me and nearly 1,000 independent owners and managers who are building our own local independent brands, and we're doing it together. Head over to vrmb.com/join.